Hey, this is Steve from CG Geek, and welcome everyone to a new Blender tutorial series on creating a modern interior. So this in-depth architectural series will cover everything involved in creating the scene you see right here. Before we get started, I'd like to give a big shout out over to Ellen Cheng on my Patreon page. She requested this tutorial and paid for it, and basically made it possible for you guys to have it right now. So a big thank you, and if you guys would like a custom requested tutorial, definitely check out my Patreon page where you can do just that. Also, if you'd like to download the finished scene you see here, you can also do that over on my Patreon page for just $3 a month and get access to this entire scene and every other scene or project file you've seen on this channel. You can download there for just $3. So before you get started in a big project like this, it's always good to have some reference images. Now in my case, I actually was asked to recreate an actual house scene that I have right up here. I'll link to it in the description, but it's actually, there's all kinds of pictures here of the actual house that I'm recreating, and you can see this is kind of the angle I took for the tutorial series. So this is a lot of good reference imagery that you can use to kind of copy and get close-ups of what it actually should look like. So it'll help a lot to get things in proportion and for inspiration and stuff like that. So I will link to this in the description if you guys are interested, and I'll also be using this as a background image to load up and kind of copy in our scene. So go ahead and download this following the link in the description, and you'll be ready to go. So I'm using Blender 2.79 for this tutorial series because we'll be taking advantage of some of the new features. So if you haven't yet already, go ahead and download Blender 2.79 and you'll be ready to follow along. And with that said, we can go ahead and jump into Blender now. So I'm going to open up that background image that I mentioned a moment ago and kind of use that as the reference image here. And we're just going to use this cube to kind of start blocking out our shape of our modern interior. So what's helpful is to first kind of place the camera. So I'm going to grab the camera, then I'm going to go to the camera settings here and make the focal length a bit wider to kind of match the image that we're copying. I'm going to pull it all the way out to about 23. So you can just go ahead and type in 23 there. And then I'm going to move my viewport to front view by hitting number pad 1, the key on the number pad 1. And then I'm going to kind of pan up a little bit here and then go Alt Control 0 and snap my camera right to that frame. Alright, awesome. So now I can hit N and open up that background image by enabling background images, add image, open, and open that image. Alright, so I'm going to do a little bit more rotating now to line up the grid floor with the floor of this reference image. So just by hitting R twice and kind of free rotating a little bit, and then rotating it that way just a little bit to line up this edge here, and then this edge kind of along here, and that looks like it's pretty in line with the floor, in my opinion. So that should work. Alright, so now I'm going to grab that cube like I said. We're going to hit Tab to go into edit mode, and I'm going to hold Control and drag it up one click so it's landing right on top of that grid floor. And then I'm going to go ahead and enable selection to visible, or limit selection to visible, so you can see through and see the vertices behind the faces there. Alright, so now I'm going to use L. Sorry about that. I'm going to use L to select my object, and then I'm going to go Shift and Z to move, whoops, not that. I'm going to go grab, and then I'm going to go Shift Z. So it's only moving along the Z axis. And then holding Control, I can let it kind of bounce around on the grid there, and we'll just snap it to be right around there once the scale looks about right. And then I can kind of move my camera a little bit more now to line up that cube with the bottom of that right there. And then I can grab that top face here by switching to face select mode there, grab it. Again, holding Control just to keep it all even and easy for you guys to follow along. We'll pull it up until it's lining along the top there. And then I'm going to move my camera a little bit more and rotate it just a little bit more to kind of line it up nicely, because you can kind of get the rotation better now. Awesome. Alright, so let's go ahead and add this shape over here. And I'm just going to tab into edit mode, hit L to select our pole here, Shift D, and then holding Control, I'll snap it over until we reach about that point there. And now I'm going to have to scale it along the X axis. So I'm going to grab just this cube here, scale on the x, and y axis, and we're just going to kind of line up this edge here and this edge here. So scaling along the y and then grabbing along the y to kind of slide it until we're lining up this edge here and this edge here. So scale along the y a little bit more, and that looks to be pretty lined up. We can grab that top face and drag it up higher now because it needs to go to the top of the frame. And let's add this wall here coming across on top of the beam here. So let's just use this same pull again by hitting L, Shift D. We'll drag it upwards. Might as well hold Control just to keep it even. Rotate it 90 along the Y, and then we can drop it down to rest right on top of that there. All right, I'm just going to let go of Control and do it manually so we can get it right on there. Awesome. All right, back into camera view, and let's grab the faces on either side and just go ahead and pull them as long as they need to be. It's okay if they're intersecting the mesh. And then we'll pull this face up a bit there. Very cool. Now a few issues still, because if we look at our image here, you can see that this needs to be set back a little bit further. So I'm going to grab it and pull it back a little bit further. So we have kind of that edge there. And then this one could come forward a little bit more. So you know that this is going to mess up this now. So I'm just going to have to grab this whole object and pull it in a little bit to kind of correct that. And then maybe pull this face in a little bit too, just to make sure I'm grabbing the right axes there, right there. All right, and if we check in camera view, it looks to be a pretty good match. And we have our first beams in place. Awesome. Let's go ahead and add this this cross beam here on top. I'm going to duplicate this again by hitting Shift D, rotating it 90 along the X this time, and dragging it up. This one's going to be scaled along the X a little bit, and scaled along the Y a little bit too. And now I'm just going to grab it, kind of place it right over that cube, like so. And then I can go ahead and L to select the whole thing, pull it out, not quite so far, and it has to come down a bit now. And then I can grab that face and pull it out all the way. All right, back in camera view, we can see that it's off a little bit. So we'll just grab the whole object. We'll grab it along the Shift Y axis. So we're moving it only along, or not along the Y axis, but along everything else. So along the X and Z. And we can kind of line it up and scale it along the Y or X a little bit. There we go. And it's looking pretty close. We can go ahead and duplicate this one by hitting L. And going into wireframe with a Z kind of helps to see through. Shift D, and we can pull it over for that beam there as well. All right, so we have sort of the basic shapes already coming together nicely. Let's go ahead and add this wall over here. To do that, I'm just going to use the face we have right here. I'm going to Shift D it, drag it that way a bit, and then if I pan around here, I can pull it out a bit, just so we're right about at the edge. And then I'm going to grab this edge here, and we'll drag it out the rest of the way. Something like that. All right, that's looking good. And now we have kind of this little bar here, which adds some nice character to the scene. So I'll go ahead and use this to Shift D. And we'll pull it over here. And then this is going to have to be scaled along the Z quite a bit. And then scaled along the X axis quite a bit. And now we can kind of pull that in on there. And we'll have to kind of go in here now and manually set it up to work just right. All right, needs to come out a little bit more. So switching to vertices select mode and then hovering over it and hitting L, we can kind of pull it to match right to the edge there. A little bit more. Grab along the X axis and hold Shift to do some fine tune movements. And then we can grab it along the Y. Grab along the Y. Whoops. Do I have? Okay. Pull it along the Y, holding Shift just to get it right to the edge there. Very good. Cool. So there's that extra little bit of detail. And I think this wall needs to come in just a little bit more. All right, if I go into camera view, you can see that's looking nicely. So we have the basic shapes. Let's go ahead and work on the windows and floor now, just to kind of fill out the rest of our interior. Okay, so let's move on to a floor and ceiling now. So I'm going to go ahead and, well actually before we add the floor, let's kind of add our back wall here. So we'll add the two main walls and then we'll move on to the floor. Alright, so for the back wall here, first off I'm going to pull this beam out just so it's over that beam there. Nice and flush there, or close enough. It's not going to be visible. But I'm going to go ahead and Shift D this edge here, and then we'll just hit E to extrude it out and across. Alright, now I do want this beam here to actually come all the way back to the wall. Alright, so right about there. That'll be nice. Okay, so in camera view here now, we can see that this edge needs to come out a little bit further. So I'm just going to grab that edge there, drag it out somewhat more, and then maybe a little bit further actually. And then it also needs to be recalculated because it's the wrong shade. You can see it's flipped the wrong way, so we'll go ahead and recalculate and flip direction. Okay, so now for the floor, we can go ahead and go Shift A, add in a plane. Well, let's tab into edit mode actually, so it's part of this mesh. And then we can just duplicate a face here. We'll just go Shift D, duplicate that one, grab along the Shift Z, so G and Shift S or Z to move it right around to the center here, and then we'll scale it up to be the approximate size we need, and then scale along the X ways so it lines up nicely there, and this edge as well. We can pull it back that ways. All right, so the floor is set. I can tab in edit mode and just pull that a little tighter, and then it also needs to be recalculated because it's currently facing the wrong direction. So we'll go ahead and flip the direction, and there we have it. Alright, so now same thing for the ceiling. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this edge here on the beam. So just grab that edge, Shift D, and then extrude this out and across. So we have our upstairs floor here, and that should look pretty good. Alright. And that is getting close to our box shape. I can kind of pull the camera out a little bit maybe, and then rotate and move it just to kind of match it up a little tighter in some areas. But that's looking like the box shape. Let's go ahead and let's do the hole cutout in the wall here. There's kind of a shelf cut right into the wall here. It's pretty cool looking. You guys probably saw it in my renders, and we'll go ahead and do that now. So to do this, I'm going to put the cuts while in the camera view here. So I can go Control R, drop in a cut right there vertically, drag it down to be right to the outside of the box you see here. Now we're just going to have a cut on top. So Control R, slide it down, and Control R, slide it down. So with those two cuts set, we need one more for the other side here. And I'm just going to estimate to be about here. If you want to be exact, there's images of this angle too, so you can load those in and get it exact if you wanted. But this is going to be plenty accurate enough for me. And then I'm just going to delete that center face. So X, delete that face. So I'm going to grab that bottom edge and just kind of rotate around here and extrude it. Whoops, I need to, right now my cursor is set to here. I want it to be medium point. All right, I'm going to extrude it. Well, first I'm going to Shift D it, so we have two of them. And then I'm going to extrude it outwards by grabbing that edge, pulling it straight out. All right, that looks about a good depth. Then I'll grab that face and extrude it upwards till we get a nice sort of board shape here. Alright, so that looks good, and I can go ahead and hit L to select it, Shift D, pull it to the top. So we have it on top and on bottom now, and then we need to duplicate them for the edges. So you could just select the whole board, Shift D, rotate 90 degrees along the X-axis, scale along the Z-axis now with S and Z, until we have approximately the right size. We'll just line it up at the bottom there, and then grab that top face, pull it up to the top. And that looks pretty good. And now we need the same thing on the other side, so just hit L, Shift D, and we'll pull it over there. Alright, very cool. And then for the backboard, we'll go ahead and just grab this whole board, Shift D, rotate 90 along the Y this time, pull it up, and pull it back. And it's just doing a little bit of woodworking right inside of Blender. It's pretty fun. Scale along the Z there, just to kind of line it up, even though you don't really see these edges. And there you have your cutout. Cool. So now there's a few more details on that back wall. There's kind of some inset lines coming across it that give it a nice look. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So first I'm going to go Control R and put in a cut right about there. And now there's just kind of this pattern across the wall of like panels that are kind of inset. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of replicate those by adding in some cuts. So between this edge and this edge, there's supposed to be like 5 or 6. So I'm going to go ahead and right there, that would be 3, that would be 4, that would be 6 right there. So I think that's going to be a little short though. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this whole edge of vertices here, drag it out a little bit further. Whoops, not these. Drag them out a little bit further. Well, make sure you get all of them. Cool. And we need these, of course, too. Not select. So you use the middle mouse wheel to unselect and B. Okay, so we'll just drag that out to about the edge there. And now if I go Control R, I want these squares to be roughly the same size as this one here. And that would be 6 right there. Let me quick count. Yep, 6. So just do that and then immediately right click to make it permanent. Cool. And we can go ahead and drag this out a little further and add in one more cut in here. Alright, that's a little bit different in size, so you can just kind of estimate to bring it back in about the right amount. And that looks to be pretty good. So now these faces are also on bottom, so we're going to go 6 on bottom to match the top exactly. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now what I'm going to do is these have to be inset and extruded a little bit. But I don't want to do them all at the same time because it would inset them all at the same time, obviously. And I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do every other one. So I'm going to grab this one and this one, this one and this one, across the board, like so, and inset them. So I'm going to go I, and we're just going to inset a very small amount. So if you look at the bottom there, you can see what the thickness setting is, and about a 0.03 looks to be about right. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in, 0.03, and it'll be exactly that. And then you can just right click to make it permanent. And then we'll do the same thing with these. So these two, on the end it's kind of a half one here, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And then this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one and this one. Okay, and actually I didn't do this right. This is supposed to be a connected one. Let me quick Control Z before I insetted those. Yes, that one needs to be selected, and then inset 0.03. Very cool. Now I can grab these 3, and then every other one, like we did here. And then I, and 0.3. Whoops, that is not right. 0.03, I'm sorry, 0.03. And, whoops, I'm not seeing it. Inset 0.03. Perfect. So now I can select these other faces that we did earlier. Just going across and selecting all of them now. And you can see there's those edges between them, which is what we want. And now I'm just going to move in here and extrude them outwards just slightly. So we have like these sort of panels coming out of the wall. All right, something like that. And that is how we do that. And that looks pretty good. And now the top row here should also come out a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and grab, holding Alt and just clicking the edge there, all those. And we'll extrude these out the same amount. So like that. Very cool. So we have that kind of pattern across the wall, adding some nice details. Now maybe the wood should stick out a little bit now too, just to kind of match those sticking up. So you grab the edge faces. You're going to change this back to medium point. The edge faces there though, and pull those out a little bit too, just to kind of match. All right. It looks like this board needs to come down a little bit. So grab that bottom face and pull it down a tad. All right, a little bit of imperfections actually will add to the realism, so you don't have to get overly picky. Maybe the woods craftsman dude messed up a little bit there. So yeah, everything can kind of go in that case. All right, so that looks nice, and we can save our project and move on to the next part. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of add that little second level back here and the cabinets over here. So to do that, I'm just going to go grab an edge in here, We'll just grab this edge right here, Shift D it, and extrude it all the way across to be about so. And then it's going to have to be pulled back to be about flush with there. Actually, just not quite flush because we're going to be extruding a little lip out of it. Then we can grab that face, extrude it upwards a bit, something like that, and then extrude it upwards another little bit. So we can grab this face here now and extrude it outwards. So we get that nice little lip going. That's coming out just a little too far. You can see right here, it needs to be lined up right about there. And that looks to be pretty close. So we can get L, select that, and recalculate the normals. And we have that little platform there. That looks nice. And let's go ahead and move on to the cabinets over here. So the cabinets are pretty basic as well, and we can pretty much use the same sort of technique we just used on the floor there for that little raised floor, except we're going to do a little bit of a change. So I'm going to go ahead and Shift D this. Let me Control Z, Shift D, yep, and then escape to not move it. Extrude it out about the approximate size of 3 cabinets. You could use the camera view here if you wanted to get more precise, but it's going to be right around there. All right, and then I'm going to extrude it up, but first I'm going to pull this back. So pull it back a bit. These are kind of set back a little bit further than the floor even, this floor here. And then we're going to go ahead and extrude it up like we did before for kind of the base. And then I'm going to, let me see, these kind of stick out, but I'm going to go ahead and just extrude the whole thing up as a big chunk to be about the right height. If we go to camera view here, we can see what the right height is, about so. And now I can grab this front face and extrude it outwards like we want it to be kind of overhanging here. So that's looking about right. Let's fix the normals on that now. Just hit L and recalculate. I'm thinking it looks a little tall, even though the reference image kind of lines up. We can go a little bit lower than that. And then I'm going to kind of cut the top board into it and some edges into it. So let's start with the top board here. I'm going to go Control R, pull it up just about there, maybe a little lower. All right, and now Control R, one more cut, drop it in about so, and then we're going to grab this by hitting Alt and clicking the edge of it. Just select that band. Right, this can be a little tricky. Zooming in can help. Right there. Extrude, scale along the Shift Z. So we're going to scale it in a little bit there, and then we also need to scale it a little bit more on the y-axis there, to be about an even scale in. And there we have that nice sort of cutout. Okay, so now there's a rough estimate of 3 drawers in here. So what I'm going to do is, I think I'll just make them, well, it's better when they're one material because it's easier for the materials. So I'll just leave it as a whole, but I'm going to hit Y to separate it, so it's its own part here. You can see you can move it if you wanted. And I'm going to Control R, cut this. Let me see, I can't quite grab it with everything else in the way. So what can help in this case is going Control I and hitting H to hide everything else. And then you go Control R and you can find your face that you're looking for. So I'm going to cut this twice. So we have three drawers here. And then I can select these faces. This one, and this one. And I want to, well, we want that kind of crease in the center. So I'm going to go ahead and add another cut to drop in a little bit of a crease there. And another cut just to separate these drawers a bit. All right. And then we'll grab the faces here and we'll extrude them outwards a little bit for the drawers. And you can see if I hit tab, that unhides everything, and that looks pretty nice. If you go back into edit mode though, it's still hidden, so I want to go Alt H to unhide it. And I can pull that top board out a little bit further too. So that looks to be pretty nice. Now I think this whole dresser unit might be a little big, so I'm going to hit L to select both those parts now and scale along the X. And this is something like if you messed up in the scale, you can always fix it. You never have to worry about not being able to fix the scale of something. All right, that's awesome. Now this kind of continues off screen a bit, so I'm just going to go ahead and extrude because the countertop kind of continues, and then there's some more drawers actually over here, so you can actually grab this whole unit again and just Shift D it and pull it over. And then we'll just line this face up and this face up with the end here. And actually what you can do to go ahead and connect these is grab both of them, hit W, and then we're going to go bridge edge loops. And then I'll just join them together. Now we only want 2 on this side, and it doesn't really matter because we won't be seeing these now. But I'm just going to go ahead and X, delete that face. Oops, I'm going to go to vertices select. There we go. Just X and delete those vertices. So that's perfect. And we can kind of cut this now to size. I'm just going to drop that right there. Cut it. Grab these. X. Delete vertices. And now there's no face in the end there, but it's not visible. There's a wall there. So that's it. That's our shelving units there. So that works pretty well. And now you can always move this by grabbing them right there, sliding them further or less if you want. Just going to deselect. Actually, let's go ahead and select the whole edge there and pull it all out just a little bit further. And the same with this. Just so we have a little bit more room to work with in case you want to animate a pan or something. So there's some of the details in our model, but it's looking pretty nice. And I think that will wrap up part 1 of our modern interior architectural tutorial series in Blender. I hope you guys are having fun and enjoying the course so far. Oh, one last thing I'm going to do is enable ambient occlusion, and that just kind of makes it easier to see. And then matte cap will give it kind of a nicer view too. So you can see all your creases now with ambient occlusion on nicer, and it just makes it a little easier. So with that said, we're done with part 1 of our modern interior, and catch part 2 to see some more of the details and the project coming together. I'll see you guys later. Bye!